things and will do anything to steal all of Maria's fortune. This is the world of Sweet Diva. Airs weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Blue Diamonds want to shine all the way from kickoff to the final whistle, while the Rockets plan to rock up with a strong winning mentality. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the exciting battle between JVWFC and TS Galaxy Queens on Sunday 20 April at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's an interesting time with regard to the Trump administration.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Of course, everybody's doing a calculation and speculating on what could be included. The safest thing to do is to get confirmation from the US as to how they arrived at the number.
The African countries almost have to think of what I would call the coalition of the wounded, looking into various countries and saying who has been badly affected by the US and how can they open up the room for engagement on that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the second hour of the show as we lead conversations that move us. Coming up in this hour for Citizens Corner, we're going to be looking at the UIF and in particular the labour centres and some of the challenges that are being experienced at the country's labour centres. Before we get into it, however, some of your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line.
Good morning, Cathy, and the SAFM listeners and everyone in the studio. This is Johnny from Edinburgh. Cathy, that student, that anonymous student you talked to a few minutes ago, he said they were protesting because they want Wi-Fi and they want fridges. I mean, is that the standard our education is now in? You know, the students protesting for Wi-Fi and for fridges. Oh, I mean, come on. It's just ridiculous. That can only happen here in South Africa. It's just so the mindset and the level our education is in and the students are in now. Yeah, what a pity. Our country is going down in every asset. Just going down. Yeah, what a pity. Thanks, bye.
Greetings, Cathy. I just want to make a comment on the Walter Sisulu University incident. I do not believe that the resident manager opened fire at the students without feeling attacked. I believe that there was a threat on his life, and his first instinct was to protect himself and his family. To what extent the attack was on him, it still remains a mystery. However, having been a student from the years 2012 to 2016, I've also engaged in such protests against residents, managers, due to the poor support and poor living conditions in the residents. And we did engage in such a protest where he also attacked the resident manager. And the university management and the residents managers, they just don't care about the students.
Good morning, Cathy. I think as a society, we are overprotecting these students. If NFSAS paid money mistakenly into their account, and then they are saying, no, we made a mistake, please go and pay the residents. The students need to be responsible enough to take the money and pay the residents. Just like me, when you get your salary, you pay your rent or you pay your bond. So there is nothing wrong with that. And this issue of protesting, I think it's getting out of hand in this country. This is someone in Polokwane. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. You know, this whole thing with the university and the killing of that person on campus. Where is the Minister of Higher Education? If the university is not making comment, why is the minister not making comment? But I also need to actually just say that this whole killing is something that was bound to happen because students think they can riot, they can do as they please just because they don't get answers that they are happy with or no answers. But no amount of no answers justifies rioting on campus, and that person probably thought his life was in danger. Mark from Cape Town.
Morning, Sis Katie. We really send our heart condolences to the family of the student who was shot by a rest manager. So we are very sorry, Sis Katie. So it shows that the guy was not properly trained in terms of how to deal with people, how to manage people, because I've heard that the guy was a security personnel, Sis Katie. So the guy was just parachuted on the position. Thanks, Sis Katie. It's Nat here in Boksburg.
Looking for an MBA that works wherever you do? Henley Business School Africa offers the only international MBA in South Africa, backed by a global network of over 100,000 alumni, leaders in 155 countries. Ranked #1 for alumni network potential, Henley gives you the connections, confidence, and capability to succeed locally and globally. This is your invitation to join a world of opportunity. Visit henleysa.ac.za.
The wait is over. I've been hustling, grinding, and now it's time for the glow up you've been waiting for. Unapologetically, made the bay. From the grind to the glam. Anelezondo the glow up on Saturdays at 8 p.m. only on SABC1, Mzansi for sure.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. #SAFM Talking Point.
Well, let's get into our conversation for this hour. Citizens Corner, looking at some of the difficulties that are being experienced with the UIF, and in particular at the labour centres of the UIF. Joining us for this conversation, Jan Mahlangu is the Retirement Funds Policy Coordinator at COSATU. Jan, good morning.
Good morning to you and my colleagues on the line and listeners of SFM.
Boyce Manedi is the Chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour. Good morning. Good morning, Boyce. All right, not sure what's happening with that connection. We will try to get back to it. Alan Beasley is an
Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can hear you now. You're live on the radio.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning to your listeners as well as colleagues on the platform.
Thank you so much. Alan Beasley is an Action SA MP, also part of this conversation. Alan, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Kathy. Good morning to your listeners and to the colleagues on the panel. Thanks for having me.
I just want to start off with setting the context, with revisiting just what our listeners had to say about some of their recent experiences at the country's labour centres. Well, for me, it was quite concerning, but I'll get your responses after we've listened to what they've had to say.
The people who were queuing at the Golopane labor some time during the night because people they sleep over there between the lines. So they were robbed during the night. Their cell phones were taken, their money, whatever that they had was taken, except their IDs. This is one of the things that I don't know whether politicians they don't see it or the department can't see that. But there is always a long queues at the Department of Labor. You have to come the whole week every day, and in the end of the day you'll be returned back because you do not have time. You do not have time to get inside to be assisted.
Peter, on UIF issue, he's telling the truth. Like basically what is happening, you'll be on the queue and then they start to work at 10 o'clock or even after. And then when they knock off on time, like 4 o'clock, or like they cut. So I don't understand why when they start later. But when they knock off on time, like exactly on point, like they cut the second person. 1 minute past 4 will never happen. It happens at all UIF offices.
Okay, so those are just, perspectives that our listeners have raised based on their own experiences visiting the labor centers of the Department of Employment and Labor. Jan, as somebody who has to deal and interact with these issues more frequently under the banner of COSATU, your impressions of what our listeners have had to say, but also what have been your experiences and the experiences of your members?
Good morning again, and my colleagues on the platform and the listeners, particularly those who are affected by the questions you've just asked me. Firstly, as COSATU, we are not surprised. We are subjected to this from time to time. COSATU, for example, has established a call center precisely because of the very same reasons. Rather than complaining, I think I'm going to make proposals because this has been going on for years. One, I'm calling on my colleague on the platform, the chairperson of the Committee of Employment and Labor, to convene organized labor and organized business to the committee and the management of UI so that we can get to discuss these issues and hold management to account. If there's any management, I'm not saying if there's any management lightly, because if really there's management of UI who are on daily basis are told about the suffering of contributors, and I'm saying of contributors because it's workers and employers who are contributing on behalf of workers, then they will listen to us and understand even proposals which we've been making, we want to make sure that this thing comes to an end. Because for as long as you have a labor center that serves different spheres of departments, if you like, this problem is not going to disappear. A colleague of mine on Monday sent me a WhatsApp message to say one female worker applied for maternity. She has been on queues from 4 o'clock in the morning, around 10 o'clock. They are told that the system is down, please go home and come back. We are telling about a worker who's using a taxi. With a taxi fare, he must come back the following day. She requested an employer that today I will be at the labor center, then the following day must do the same. The next thing that worker is going to experience is losing her job. That's the first proposal I want to make. Our experience is that it's just damning what workers are going through at the labor center. And I hope my colleagues in the platform as the members of the committee will take our proposal to heart so that we can deal with these matters. And there's just a lot. I want to stop there for now.
Jan, talk to me about the call center that you say you established as a result of this problem.
The call center was established for two reasons, among many. That the organizing department of COSATU and the policy unit were receiving complaints. And complaints, of course, they range. For now, I'm going to focus on the matter at hand. Workers will call and say, we have applied for UI benefit. It's not coming. Two, a worker will call and say, I've been at the labor center to apply for a call center. The e-filing is, I'm told, that is down. By the way, it has been down since October last year. I cannot be assisted. Employers will send us emails with proof to that effect, hence my proposal, to say we want to comply and make sure that we declare. We cannot declare because the e-filing is down. We have submit applications for employees. Those cannot be attended to because e-filing is down. Now, if you take files, physical files, to the labor center, you'll be told the next day or the following week that they can't find them. It was one of the reasons why we established the center, to make sure that we work with UI and the department, and to make sure that we hold those who would have received or the calls would have forwarded to them, that within a particular time frame they come back to us. But it was established, last month, and it's not something that it was meant to replace UIF. UIF must do that which is it was established to do. Those officials must do that which they are paid to do on a monthly basis. Thank you.
Jan, for me, it's an example of the extent of the dereliction of duty, right? That you have even had to take this step so that you can record for yourselves the issues that your members are raising. But this should be work that the Department of Employment and Labour is doing itself. Boys, as Parliament, do you think that there has been accountability here for the different individuals that are in positions of leadership that should be ensuring that the situation isn't what it is?
Can I then move in? Because you just mentioned both of us. Probably don't come first.
Yes, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you. Once again, thanks for the opportunity, Cathy and colleagues on the platform, as well as the listeners of SAFM. From where one looks at it, from the portfolio committee point of view, you would remember that we necessarily are not the people in the labor centers, but we're playing the oversight. So my perspective is purely from what we pick up from the point of oversight and what we are getting as a response on how these matters get to be improved. Let me start by indicating that from all reports that we have interacted with, as the legacy report, as well as workshops we've had just to understand what's happening in the department, it was clear that you have big challenges in the UIF as well as the compensation fund. And as the committee, we took a position that these are the entities we're going to focus on. It's good that you're focusing on this one, and I'll restrict myself to the UIF one. The Auditor General also reports showed us that the problem you have is the ICT system, which causes people, even those that may want to use digital platforms to access the services, are forced to go and queue because of that problem. At the time, in particular the October period as mentioned by Jan, you would be aware that there was also a problem which was publicized widely. Firstly, a procurement problem, which is what we're given. Service provider, the court issues, which collapsed the system completely. But again, from where the committee sits, it was also to address the concerns that the Auditor General raised, where the system of the department, the UIF, uses that platform. And we had asked that they probably get permission to move away from that platform so that they are able to address the ICT challenges. So the report we have, which is most recent as of the 14th of April, is such that the UIF has developed now a system to address this problem. The pilot was launched in January 2025. And at this point, the understanding we've been given is that the processes have now been simplified. The Chief Information Officer appeared before the committee just to demonstrate even how the system has now improved. But we do know that for those areas that are not yet connected to the system, you will have such challenges. Of course, from the reports they've given us, almost all labor centers are now loaded, except for 5 labor centers that are not yet done for different reasons. That will be in the areas of your Daung, your Mohwase, Brets, Christiana, Malelane. So those were still going to be uploaded to the system, but where the system is working, it should be easy for people to even track where their application is, and that for those that operate the system, they should be able to see if a matter has been on the system for long and it has not been attended to. So we're given that sense, including figures now that are improving in terms of claims received and the payouts that get to be made.
All right. I'm going to ask you to pause it there, Mr. Manedi. When we continue, of course, it's one thing to be given a perspective. There is, of course, the reality, right, of what people actually experience when they are at these labor centers. And there seems to be a disjuncture between what you are saying was the report that was given to Parliament versus what people's experiences are. It's now 10:30, time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Onda Lambana, and a very good morning. 14 accused in the asbestos roofing removal corruption case, including former Free State Premier Ace Magashule and former Human Settlements MEC Oli Mlamleli, are expected to plead in the High Court in Bloemfontein this morning. The American missionary who was allegedly kidnapped during a church service in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape last week has been found unharmed, and the South African Human Rights Commission has raised concerns over a surge of disinformation on WhatsApp, which it claims is inciting violent protests at universities. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 91 to the dollar, 25 rand 09 to the pound, and 21 rand 53 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JCE also mixed during mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are currently trading in negative territory. Gold is trading at $3,299, platinum $958 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.39 a barrel.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Dango, for the love of the game and Mzansi for sure.
Sekwenzenjani?
Soccer Zone has relocated to a new slot, 9 p.m. live every Monday on SABC 1. Mzansi Africa.
Fascinating goals.
The unbelievable saves.
From Africa Borwa to the entire African continent to the Bundesliga and the Premier League.
High-level reviews of crucial match scenarios by the legendary Mr. Rev.
Top-class analysis, latest news about the beautiful game.
And Momish of the Week.
SABC Sport Football Weekend ends on
Mondays at 9 p.m. on Soccer Zone. Live on SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
Honoring the life and times of a beloved freedom fighter, a father as well as a husband, and as we move in recognizing 32 years since the assassination of Chris Hani, and we ask you, how should we remember him?
Bridget, I just want to read this quotation, which I have known since 2006 about Chris Hani. Throughout my life, I've been a soldier, from a section leader, platoon commander, company commander, now the chief of staff from Mkhonto Sizwe. The spectacles that I used in my previous appointments, I did not throw them away. I sometimes take the same spectacles I used as a troop and put them on so that I can be able to see how does a subordinate at that level see things. I always recall what I dreamed about as a troop or section leader.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. #SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the talking point this morning. We're looking at the labor centers and some of the challenges that many people have when needing services from these labor centers. Joining us for this conversation is Jan Mahlangu. He's with COSATU and he coordinates the retirement policy funds there. Boyce Manedi is the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour, and Alan Beasley is an Action SA MP. So, boys, before I bring in Alan, I just want you to respond to the issue that I raised, that yes, you've got this report and this list of things that you've been told by the officials that have come before before the Portfolio Committee that have said things are working, and they've given you what it is that they have done to deal with administrative issues. That's clearly not translating into how services are functioning on the ground. How do you explain that?
Okay. Like I said, I wanted to conclude on this point, that this is the updated report that we have received. And this report didn't just come. It is because of the understanding even by members, because members themselves, as they service constituencies, they do go to these labor centers. So this emanates out of our oversight, where we could pick up that there are problems, even though at some point when procurement matters were resolved, we were told the systems are up and would share this. Even as this report was presented, if you follow the deliberations in the Employment and Labour Committee, members were like saying these get to be fancy reports, but they leave the reality of those that must receive the services has not improved. So this therefore gets to be a response to also those concerns that it's a reality, the concerns that have been raised by some of the stars on WhatsApp and so on, that this needs attention. So I'm just saying, from where we are, we'll then be monitoring as the improvement is said to be happening in specific labor centers. We are able to check that against the reports that we're getting. Maybe the last point to really make, which is something Jan spoke to about management and so on, is that part of what the Portfolio Committee looked at is the need to create leadership stability in the UIF. As you know, you'll have acting persons and so on, and that takes away responsibility from people because of the uncertainty and so on. And there's been commitment from the department led by the ministry that these matters get to be addressed. So there's no denial at all that these gaps are still there and they must be addressed. Thank you.
Ellen, what's your take?
Sorry, Cathy. Yeah, so my take is I think you raised a very good question earlier about accountability. And from Action SA's perspective, there's just no accountability in the system. And everything rises and falls on leadership. And it was quite interesting. So, excuse me, I sit on scope for the Standing Committee of Public Accounts, and the SIU came to us the other day, and they presented a very damning report that fingered the top leadership of the UIF. And they said that there needs to be serious disciplinary actions. They were all given a slap on the wrist, and it's totally unacceptable. And the other day I was engaging with the Auditor General, and I asked her what is the one thing that she would do to bring accountability into the system. And she said was for corrupt officials to go to jail. And I think that's the only way we're going to change the UIF is if the corrupt officials go to jail. You know, my heart goes out to every single person who's lost their job, who's battling to claim their benefits, and they keep continuously getting messed around, and it's because of incompetence and corruption in the system. You know, the UIF collects 23 billion rand a year from workers and employees. It's massive, 23 billion. They're sitting with 100 billion in assets under management. If there was the political will to turn the UIF around, it could be turned around in 6 months. But our concern as Action SA has just become a feeding scheme for the corrupt and incompetent, and the poorest of the poor of South Africans suffer because of it. And the only way we're going to change it is if there is accountability. I mean, the previous voice was talking about, you know, acting. The reason why there's an acting commissioner is the current commissioner is on suspended for the second time. You know, we need to stop that. We need to have competent, honest people with integrity heading up these organizations. And if we can get the leadership right at the top, things will change at the bottom, and services will change overnight. And that's what we've got to focus on, is getting the competent people with integrity heading up these organizations, and the services will improve overnight.
What's concerning to me is that even as we talk about the need for accountability, Parliament, of course, is able to exercise that level of oversight and accountability. But if all that happens is that there are officials that can come before Parliament, they can say what they say, even though that may not be a full or even a true reflection of what's happening on the ground, they're allowed to say it, and then just to continue to make promises around fixing the situation, whereas we know just how deep the impact of what is happening is. There doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency around fixing these problems. There seems to be more an attitude of acceptance around, oh, well, it's the UIF, there's corruption, people must be arrested. Until then, I guess this is what people are going to have to deal with. Surely this is not what we should be subjecting people to, Alan.
No, I fully agree with you.
My hand, please, Cathy.
All right, no problem, sir. I'll come to you shortly.
But again, it comes to there needs to be the political will. You know, for the last 5 years, the UIF has had a qualified audit report. You know, the minister should be fired. And who ultimately appoints the minister? It's the president. So as a comeback, everything rises and falls on leadership. Action SA has only been in Parliament for 7 months, and this is a big issue that we're going to be driving. And we're putting through more legislation to enforce in the corruption thing. But if the minister has overseen a corrupt, incompetent organization for 5 years, he should be fired. But they're not fired. And when the current minister came to scope, I asked her, if things don't improve at the UIF, will you resign? And she said, no, it's not her responsibility. So there has to be the political will. And you're 100% right. If there's not a political will to change things, things won't change. There needs to be that political will. And it's certainly something that from an Action SA perspective, we're going to be driving. There needs to be consequences. It can't be business as usual.
Boys, let me give you a chance to come in. I think it's you that has your that wants to come in. Sure, go for it.
And me,
Okay,
Kathy, don't forget me.
Okay. Can I then come in?
Go ahead.
And then Jan can follow. Right. No, I think we should understand the work of Parliament oversight to be about ensuring that accountability. And the reason we will pin down the officials to compare the information we have, complaints we get from people, and what they report. Is the reason we would be getting reports that follow, which would then say there must be improvement. Secondly, there is no way that would support wrongdoing. And for this reason, even in the 7th Parliament, new as we can be, we have appreciated the efforts made on follow the money, which is another focus area in the UIF, where there's indication of wrongdoing, and that we also are pushing for the same, that where criminality is picked up, that those must face the consequences of the law, and there's no negotiation about that. But the point I was making, though, which we said the ministry has made this commitment, is that indeed, at least as a point of agreement, even with and there, that you need leadership stability there. So you've had officials that get suspended. You've got officials that act. As I said, once you act for a few months, there's also uncertainty there, which can be also evasion of accountability. So we're also getting that issue sorted out as it relates to the stability.
I guess the point.
Of course, yes.
Sorry, boys. I guess the point is the quality of the oversight would be reflected in the result of the efficiency or improvements of the organization. And if we are then continuing to see a deteriorating institution, it also speaks to the quality of the accountability and the oversight. Because, of course, conducting oversight just for the sake of oversight should not be enough. It's not sufficient. You should be able to say, this is the oversight we conducted, this is what we have found, and as a result of our intervention on 1, 2, 3, this is what we can point to as improved efficiencies directly as a result of the work that we as Parliament have done.
May I then come in so that I conclude on the point? I think I've heard you well, and I would appreciate that you hear this point, that the reports we talk about are not just reports because officials generate. It is out of that oversight work that we do, and we demand certain things to happen. Like I'm saying, including making recommendations, especially when it's areas of corruption and so on, that, look, you can investigate yourselves. That's just one example. Bring other agencies on board, like the SIU and so on, because over time, these will be taken more as internal matters of discipline and so on. And in some instances, it may be the same people that are involved. And that's why you also need the eye that comes from outside that's not contaminated by the environment. So I'm just saying that that's the point. Of course, the point that relates to whether there's action that gets taken, whether to the ministry or whatever, the honorable member would have indicated, the minister responded to this question. I think it's a purview of the president, not of Parliament. But we are appreciating, though, that the 7th Parliament has just kicked in it. It's working on the base or foundation laid by the 6th Parliament, but we are now putting a sense of urgency in terms of turnaround for things that have been put on the table. And that is why even this suggestion or recommendation made by Jan on a platform to engage the different stakeholders, be it organized business, organized labor, and as well as the department and the entity. We are open to that because the Parliament has to have public participation in any way. and these stakeholders shape also how Parliament should look, even in future legislation, on what could be the gaps created by legislative constraints that lead us not to address certain things, but where certain things could be addressed easily. In different forums, we do look at that. So I'm just saying that the reports, what is said to be progress report, must not be seen in isolation from matters that have been raised through oversight. Just let's say the same here, that SCOPA, outside now of the employment and labor, SCOPA has also been seized with the same entities that we have prioritized as the committee. And we have made it clear that our judgment of whether we're making progress or not will be on how we turn around the UIF to serve its intended beneficiaries as well as the CF. Thank you.
Jan?
Thank you very much, Cathy and colleagues. One, workers and employers contribute to UI so that when the right time comes, they are able to receive their income replacement on time. Workers will not hear anything that we are saying on this platform. For tonight, they expect and need a warm meal on the table. It is an indictment that we are having this conversation. If there's no crisis, there is a crisis. First thing that I want to raise. Secondly, 9 months almost later, you filing is still not working. I mean, really, what does that mean? If that's not a problem. And we are saying not as something that we woke up and created in our heads, that employers and workers are saying, we have had them earlier on, by the way, but they are sending us emails to say, where is the system? What can be done? It's 8 months later. Thirdly, that officials are coming to the department. The complainants, whether in NATLEC, publicly, etc., were not part of those engagements, hence our proposals. That in itself is a problem. There's no system that you could say actually it's functioning. If it is functioning, why then are all these complaints that we are talking about? I think on corruption, the SIU did raise some issues, including Hawks. I want to add that it would be better if they are also invited so that they take us into confidence in terms of, one, what was raised by organized labor, COSATU in particular, two, the investigations which they have done and what is happening, because I agree with other colleagues, unless somebody is prosecuted and clearly action is taken, I'm not talking about at a lighter note, the colleague from Action SA, but proper action insofar as these matters are concerned and people go where they deserve to be, we will have the perpetual conversation and workers will not receive that which is rightfully theirs, an income replacement. And it can be correct that workers are contributing, but when they're supposed to be paid, and there are these many explanations that, they get to know, it's a serious indictment. And I think we need to be seen to be taking action and to be making sure that those who are supposed to account, they're really accounting. 3 acting commissioners in 6 months, it is a problem in itself.
Ian, we're going to continue with this conversation shortly. I'll, of course, also bring in the reflections of our listeners.
They say fortune can change lives, but does it change who you are? From Engotu to a Durban, twins born into struggle, now with millions in their hands, but with wealth comes division. One twin raised with responsibility, the other treated like royalty. 2 parts, one dream, Maskandi greatness. Brand new telenovela, Amalanga Wafani, where money, family and betrayal collide. Starts April 2025, weekdays at 6:30, only on SABC 1, Mzansi for sure.
The Toffees want to convert pressure to pleasure by claiming maximum points against the reigning champions.
To put Everton level, he certainly does. No mistake. Beautifully done by Iliman Adai.
But the citizens are not interested in any outcome but victory.
And there's Grealish, and inside 2 minutes, City are in front. And Jack Grealish, his first Premier League.
This is the Premier League. Witness the mouth-watering clash between Everton FC and Manchester City FC on Saturday, 19 April at 3:30 p.m. live on S3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Switch to stream with SABC Plus. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime. Zero subscription fees. Download SABC Plus on Android or iOS and watch the Betway Premier Soccer League, the English Premier League, and the Bundesliga live. You can also catch up with Uzalo, Skim Sam, Generations on demand and listen to your favorite radio stations live. Ukhozi, Umhlobo Wenene, Radio 2000 and 5FM, all for free. Switch to stream with SABC Plus now. No subscription fees. Stream anywhere, anytime with SABC Plus.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Let me go straight to the phone lines. Romeo, you're in KZN. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister Cathy and the fellow listeners. Also from Cathy, I would want to ask a question about the issue of UIF, and it seems like UIF, in terms of administering that organization, it will become a hectic problem to each and every employee. My question is to the portfolio committee. UIF, is it a mandatory policy or it's a compulsory issue to the employees? If it is a mandatory, why do we have got a problem after you have service of 9 or 10 years to a company, then you are given your money for only for 4 months? Why it is like that? And don't we have a system in which the inspectors from time to time to check if your things are correct and your names are correct? Such that when someone submits his papers to UIF, he won't have any problem for collecting his money that he has saved for.
All right, Romeo. Nkanta, you're also in KZN. Good morning.
Good morning, my sister Katie. Thank you for taking my call. You see, my sister Katie, I agree with the previous call about the issue of the UIF policy. It is unjust. The issue of being paid for the 4 years contribution when we have worked 30 years, it is unjust. Secondly, I'd also lost my UIF after received 4 UIF forms, and then spoken with Tanta Kumalo, who was a spokesperson of Tulas Noisi, 3 times, and without no success. And I'm still waiting. I'd hustle. Someone else managed to get someone in a job, carry on with life. But the UFO story, ANC ministers must come in account, because when they don't want to account, they're preaching their media charter.
Okay. Thanks, Nkanta. Sillo in Polokwane.
How's Kathy?
Yes, Sillo.
Mitiro ya bola ngwana man. Our big brother from the parliament portfolio, speaking very good English, very strategic. And we are very happy for him because he's doing a very great job. But the queues at each and every center, it says that the oversight is done by people who are non-technical, because the efficiency and the quality of our systems are there. The solution, the State Information Technology Agency must be allowed to deal only with governance. The technical part and the support must be taken to independent IT, competent IT companies, because the problem here is the State Information Technology Agency. At the core of the problem is the State Information Technology Agency, because they don't have capacity, they don't have the competency, they all have the best defense lawyers. Just to defend, to say, we are saying the queues are long, and the systems, if are not working, they are slow. They need to come up with a solution, but they failed for 30 years. We are saying, let's disbundle it. Let's have each and every department choose their own efficient IT companies. That's my
Okay.
view.
Thanks for that, Silo. Boys?
Thanks, Elsie.
Can I come in?
Yes, please, sir.
All right. As you say, I must just be brief. Maybe just on the part about independent providers versus the SETA question. I've addressed that in the beginning. That part of what we put as an intervention was that separation, so that the UIF as well as the compensation fund are able to have functional systems that adhere to the services that they need to bring. And therefore, that change in the system, which I was reporting about, is a response to that. And from where we are, we have been given a sense that that rollout, including loading the others that are not loaded, should be completed by May, which is the next month. In that scope, be able to assess fairly that everybody is on the system, not because others are not, and maybe that would be the excuse why they're not getting services. So everybody would be on the same platform in that regard. So it's a matter that has been considered, because that link with the department is indeed to SETA and so on. So the part about the time it takes, I think we have accepted that there is a gap there, and that's why interventions are needed. And of course, because some of these are specific matters that an employee would have experienced, it does help that even though you may be communicating or have communicated with the previous spokesperson, that also Parliament gets to be petitioned, even by individual citizens, complaints, and we're able to take those. And we have seen results even in that approach, where somebody will say, my maternity leave has not been paid. And when we make that intervention and get accountability, those matters get to be attended to. So I'm trying to really rush in this regard. Now, I think the part about details and checking them, once the system indeed serves the purpose, like I said, it should be easy to even track it on your own wherever you are, in a way that helps you to be updated at all times where your application is. Of course, there will always be challenges with the system as you build it, but that's not what we are justifying here from the side of the committee. I was just reflecting on the reports that we get to interrogate. And I can say this without fear of contradiction, that from an oversight point of view, the reason members say these are just fancy reports when you get to the meeting and raise issues that are practical on the ground is our interest in the lived reality of those that get the benefits from these entities, and we're committed to turn that corner.
We're out of time for this conversation. Let me thank you all for being part of it. It's now 11 o'clock. Here are your latest news updates.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories at 11. Legendary actor Don Mlangeni passes away and accused in the asbestos case expected to plead in court. For SAFM News, I am Ondalambana, and a very good morning. We start with news just in. Veteran South African actor Don Mlangeni Nawa has died. His family confirmed his death in a statement. Nawa was best known for his iconic role as Zeb Matabane on the SABC3 soapie Isidingo and as Lakasha on the classic SABC1 sitcom Scootie's Nice. We'll have details in our later bulletin. 14 accused in the asbestos roofing removal corruption case, including former Free State Premier Ace Mohlahlana and former Human Settlements MEC Oli Mlamleli, are expected to plead in the High Court in Bloemfontein this morning. On the second day of the trial today, a representative from Diamond Hill Trading will plead on behalf of the company. The accused are facing more than 90 charges, including corruption, fraud, money laundering. Kagamukhelwa Sikwe reports.
Businessman Edwin Sodi, who owns Blackhead Consulting, is among the 4 accused who pleaded not guilty yesterday on day 1 of the trial. He's facing more than 90 counts of corruption, fraud and money laundering charges for his involvement in the 255 million rand alleged irregular asbestos roof removal tender issued by the Free State government in 2014. I'm Kamokhelo Siekwi, SABC News in Bloemfontein.
The American missionary who was allegedly kidnapped during a church service in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape last week has been found unharmed. This follows the Hawks rescue operation. The 45-year-old missionary was discovered inside a vehicle at a safe house in a suburb in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Hawks spokesperson Avele Fumba says their operation resulted in a shootout in which 3 suspects were killed.
As officers approached the house, they observed a vehicle on the premises. The suspects inside the vehicle, upon seeing the law enforcement, allegedly attempted to flee and opened fire on the team. The officers responded with tactical precision, leading to a high-intensity shootout in which 3 unidentified suspects were fatally wounded. The victim was found inside the same vehicle from which the suspect had launched their attack. Miraculously, unharmed, he was immediately assessed by medical personnel and is currently in an excellent condition.
The South African Human Rights Commission has raised concerns over a surge of disinformation on WhatsApp, which it claims is inciting violent protests at universities. This follows an incident in which one person was gunned down on the Nelson Mandela campus of the Walter Sisulu University in Mthatha in the Eastern Cape. 2 other people were wounded in the incident, which happened during a students' protest yesterday morning. The SAHRC's provincial manager, Dr. Aileen Carter.
What we've seen is spate of disinformation on WhatsApp lines. So what usually happens is students are swept up in the moment through these WhatsApp discussions, and they are informed incorrectly about what is happening on the ground, which makes them join these violent protests. So what we are asking again is that students be very circumspect about the information that they consume online and that they check the validity of the information shared currently in these groups.
Disaster management teams in KwaZulu-Natal are on high alert. This after the South African Weather Service issued a warning for disruptive rains in areas including eThekwini, Ilembe, Umgungundlovu, Ugu and Herigwala. China's National Bureau of Statistics says the country's economy grew by 5.4% in the first quarter of this year. The figure aligns with the Chinese government's annual growth target of around 5% this year. Analysts expect Chinese growth to slow in the second quarter as U.S. President Donald Trump's steep tariffs on Chinese imports take effect. The BBC's Katie Silva has the details.
That beat expectations, which were more around the 5.1% mark. But what it does suggest is perhaps something called front loading is going on. Basically, people buying up, or businesses buying up Chinese products ahead of the imposition of hefty tariffs, which of course had been flagged by President Trump before he came into office. The other factor, of course, that we must remember is that these statistics do come from Beijing, and analysts and economists don't always come to the same numbers.
Recapping the top story, 14 accused in the asbestos roofing removal corruption case, including former Free State Premier Ace Mohlahlana and former Human Settlements MEC Oli Mlamleli, are expected to plead in the High Court in Bloemfontein this morning. I am Lambana for SFM News headlines at 11:30.
Bahlabani Bantwa and Abafana Besithende are both aware of the uphill towards the wrap-up of the season. They are searching for nothing but a win. Catch the exhilaration of Mzansi's football, Marumo Gallants versus Golden Arrows, on Saturday, 19 April at 2:30 p.m. Live streaming on SABC Plus and SABC One. Then at 3 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
April is Freedom Month, a month to reflect, celebrate, and move forward. SAFM is bringing you powerful stories, insightful debates, and voices that shape our nation. Stay tuned to SAFM, where freedom, history, and the future meet. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
It's an interesting time with regard to the Trump administration.
South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Of course, everybody's doing a calculation and speculating on what could be included. The safest thing to do is to get confirmation from the US as to how they arrived at the number.
The African countries almost have to think of what I would call the coalition of the wounded, looking into various countries and saying who has been badly affected by the US and how can they open up the room for engagement on that.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
All right, give us the context. What actually happened?
So what the lady actually did was to submit the same claim twice. In Motherwell, indicating that she was involved in a car accident, and then, also submitted the same claim, indicating that she was a pedestrian and that she was hit by a car. And it was picked up when she submitted for the second time that this was the same person. And it was found out when she indicated in her claim that she couldn't work, and so claimed, monies that she would have lost.
But good news in terms of an actual conviction as well. Macintosh Polela, spokesperson for the Road Accident Fund.
The National Pulse, 3 to 6 p.m. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy. It's Kuleani from Richards Bay. Cathy, I just want to thank you very much. You taking this topic on of labor, the labor department, it shows that you're a good listener, Cathy. And I always listen to your show. You know how to listen to the listeners out there and really take in what they're saying, even though, some of them seem like they are fighting with you, but you take your time and you listen and you take in what someone is saying without insulting their intelligence. Thank you very much, Cathy, for taking this topic on. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, as a truck driver, Cathy, I have been fired from different trucking companies because these companies, they just do as they wish. Then when you go to the UIF, you are contributing unconditionally because you don't have a choice. You have to contribute. When you go there to apply for your monies, they'll give you the runaround until you get another job and your monies are piling up. Then they say there's a cutoff for 4 years and whatever the condition they are. We don't have time to go into details of that. But these people, they've got the audacity to give the government money of the UIF and say we have got some money here, but they can't give the workers. I can't.
My name is Cathy, this time from Bloemfontein. The treatment that people are getting from the UIF office is shocking. Right here in Bloemfontein, you will call their landline. No one will bother answering it. Whether they've changed numbers or what, you don't know. But the phone will ring non-stop. You go there, the state system is offline. I remember I applied for paternity leave. It took me almost 4 months before I can finalize my application and receive the money. You go to this, they will send you back for this, they will send you to another room, they will send you back to the previous just ruling. That's how labor works.
In team, isn't this every single government instituted system? It always works when they test it, but they don't test it from being a user on the outside, because it never works. We have endless problems with every single time we need to do something with government, as in tax, as in applications for whatever. It just doesn't work for a normal user.
Cathy, this is Stanley from Guguletu. I'm siding with the students in this particular case, right? This thing has been going on for a month, and there was enough time for the university to engage and de-escalate the situation. These students they cannot organize themselves into a group overnight. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time, which is enough time for the university to engage. The issue of the internet is important. Students have to have internet. Somebody trivialized it to Wi-Fi. It's not about Wi-Fi, it's about internet for studying. Food, we bring the kids food, they go and buy their own food, they need a fridge. If the school does not want them to bring in a fridge, and they also don't want to fix the fridges that they have, then the kids do have a reason to bring that up as an issue.
#SAFM Talking Point.
All right. Well, thank you for those WhatsApp voice notes that you've sent throughout the show on the different issues. Yes, we will absolutely stay with this matter around the labor centers, and of course still try and get the department to come on air to explain to us why it is that things are in the state that they're in, because it just can't be right. It just cannot be right. All right, our final conversation for this morning then, we're looking at sports injuries in South Africa, particularly at a school level, that have doubled. This is in sport, including rugby, cricket, soccer, and basketball. Rugby, of course, traditionally has had one of the highest incidents of concussion in team sports, where 10 to 15% of high school rugby players will suffer a concussion every season. It also carries the risk, of head injuries ranging from those minor concussions that I've mentioned to severe traumatic brain injuries. Now, if a child continues to play sport without the proper assessments, medical assessments that are needed, the consequences, particularly for their future, can be quite dire and in some instances even fatal. Dr. Hofmeyer Viljoen is a radiologist and director of SCP Radiology. He joins us on the line. Dr. Viljoen, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy. Thanks for having me.
Let's firstly begin just with what we are seeing around, the level of injuries at school level in this country. As somebody who works in this field and deals with patients all the time, are you at all concerned about what we are watching unfold?
Well, during the winter season, we certainly see a significant uptake in sports injuries over the past weekends. We've seen lots of minor injuries, ranging from sprained ankles and a couple of broken bones, but we also see the occasional serious head and neck injuries, and concussions obviously very common. There has been an increase over the past few years. I'm not sure if that is disproportionate to the increase in patient population, but there's definitely awareness about that, and but there is a slight increase.
Do you think that it has anything to do with the level of competitiveness of sport at school level, that as things become more competitive, the level of, I'm loath to use the word aggression, but I can't find another appropriate word right now. But that increases, and then, it sort of increases how young people are showing up on the sports field.
Yeah, that probably it plays a role. If I look at the schoolboy rugby players in today, that you see they significantly bigger than the Springbok players when I was at school in the 90s. But also with the increased competitiveness, I think there's increased awareness, increased training. But if you're going to have, forwards weighing 120, 130 kilograms colliding with, high-speed backline players, there's more energy and more impact, and certainly that does play a role.
Which are the injuries that you believe parents should know about, should be mindful of, and should also be just making their children aware of the risks around those injuries?
Yeah, a concussion is probably the most important one, because it's a silent killer, as they say. The symptoms are not always apparent. Imaging is invariably normal, and there's different under-reporting from the children. They know that if they report the concussions, they won't play for a couple of weeks. I think the parents, the coaches, and some of the parents and coaches and the states aren't aware of the long-term risks of recurrent concussion. So I'd probably say concussion is underreported and probably needs a bit more awareness.
Let's talk about a concussion. Perhaps you can talk us through not only what a concussion is, but how it presents. What are the symptoms of a concussion?
Well, a concussion is a form of mild traumatic brain injury. It's a closed-end injury that results either from a direct blow to the head or a whiplash injury from a neck injury. And it's not a direct injury to the brain, but it's got to do with the to and fro movement of the brain inside the skull. And it's a functional injury. The brain's function is temporarily disrupted. If we do a CT scan and even an MRI, typically that's normal. But there can be serious consequences, and the symptoms typically are headaches, nausea, irritability, vertigo, some balance problems. Children have memory problems. Sometimes there's transient loss of consciousness and sensitivity to light and noises. And these can last a couple of days to several weeks. And they can be mild, but quite conspicuous.
We'll continue the conversation with Dr. Mohlahlana shortly.
The wait is over. I've been hustling, grinding, and now it's time for the glow up you've been waiting for. Unapologetically, made the pay. From the grind to the glam. Anelezondo the glow up on Saturdays at 8 p.m. only on SABC 1, Mzansi for sure.
Football intelligence will be tested between the students, University of Johannesburg and Tshwane University of Technology. They are both eager to go an extra mile for victory. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Varsity Derby, UJ Ladies versus TUT Ladies on Sunday, 20 April at 11:30 a.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
#SAFM Talking Point.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're looking at head injuries in school sports. Dr. Mohlahlana is a radiologist and director of SCP Radiology. He joins us for this conversation this morning. Dr. Mohlahlana, when we look at sports such as rugby, it can perhaps be easier to understand and see where and how head injuries could potentially happen, at least the type that would lead to concussions, as you've been speaking. But in cricket, soccer, basketball, Dr. Mohlahlana? All right, it looks like we've lost Dr. Mohlahlana on the line. We're just trying to get him back up. We do apologize for that. There seems to have been a technical issue there in as far as his line is concerned. Let's take a break. We'll continue shortly.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, it looks like we've got Dr. Viljoen back on the line. I do apologize for that. So, Dr. Viljoen, before we lost you, I was asking about the different sport and made the point that with rugby, it's perhaps easier to see how some of these injuries take place. But in other sports, soccer, basketball, cricket?
Yeah, certainly we see way less of that. I think recently in the news there's an international, maybe Australian cricketer that retired because of repeated head injuries. The bowlers are way faster than 20 years ago. But football, so again, we don't see that much, but they also have repetitive subclinical. I think often even a bigger danger is these subclinical or subconcussive head injuries where the patient or the player and the coach himself aren't aware. But if they do detailed cognitive testing or neurological testing, then the patient has suffered some damage. And it's just with rugby, it's way more obvious that the impact is higher. But we do see it in other sports.
So what is the advice then that you want to offer up to parents, to those that are within the schooling system around some of the risks of these injuries?
I think awareness is the first start, and education to the coaching staff, in rugby specifically, appropriate tackling technique. They need to, the parents and the coaches need to stick to the return to play guidelines, the concussion guidelines, not put pressure on the players to return too early, which is the big risk. There should be adequate and sufficiently trained medical staff that can do these tests, and the coaching staff should be trained to be aware and test the players if there's any suspicion, and then remove them from play. And the player shouldn't return to contact sport unless he is completely symptom-free. And that's not just symptom-free at rest, but with exercise and training as well. So it's a gradual return to play, and not to enter any contact situation until he's symptom-free when training.
All right. I want to just play this voice note from one of our listeners. It's on the long-term effects of concussions.
Hi, Cathy. I was wondering if you could get the doctor to talk about the long-term effects of multiple concussions. There was a movie starring Will Smith, I think it's called Concussion, about these sort of injuries in the US with the American football, and a true story about a Nigerian doctor who tried to bring this terrible, terrible thing to people's attention, and they really shut him down and sort of pushed him out of the country.
Dr. Viljoen?
Yeah, so, that is a chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That is, over many years of recurrent head injuries. Some patients, we tend to not see it in school age athletes, but many professional athletes, especially the American footballers, because of the high impact and maybe the false sense of security which the headgear gives them, and these patients eventually develop a neurodegenerative disease with similar progression to Alzheimer's. It's irreversible, and they get progressive cognitive decline, emotional issues, poor sleep, and it's essentially a fatal disease with no cure, but can only really be diagnosed post-mortem. We can suggest that a patient might have that, but the imaging is non-specific. It can look like any dementia, but it's certainly very topical, and especially in the professional level. It's been known for many years, even since the 1920s. They used to call it being punch drunk. The professional boxers have that. I think the other word was dementia pugilistica. So it's not a new phenomenon, but I think with this individual doctor first described the pathological findings.
So when it comes then to untreated concussions for minors or for young children, what is it that you want parents to be aware of, and as far as the long-term effects on these children could likely be?
Well, with recurrent concussion, patients tend to develop persistent impaired concentration, poor school performance, emotional issues, poor sleep, depression. And so the long-term problems are well known. There is also acute and potentially fatal acute problem, which is called the second impact syndrome, when patients who have had a concussion return to play and suffer a minor second injury, which can, because of the dysregulation in the blood flow in the brain, that could lead to acute, severe, and often fatal brain swelling. It's fortunately very rare, but although people are aware of the long-term effects, there could be a short-term fatal consequence if the patient returns to play and even just suffers a minor head injury.
Good morning, Cathy and the listeners. I have been against rugby since we gave art therapy to a young man who had been brain damaged through rugby and came for something that he could do. And he had been a good student before then. He never recovered. I haven't allowed my nephews to do rugby. Unfortunately, being in the schools they were, the only other option was hockey and not soccer. Thank you. Claire from near George.
Claire, thanks for sharing that experience. And one, of course, always wonders, Dr. Viljoen, what is the best approach in as far as trying to prevent some of these situations? Is it to completely bar the children from participating in the sport, or are there steps that can be put in place that create a buffer, a cushion of sort in the event of injury?
Yeah, certainly. And I think rugby is a fantastic sport and can be safe. I mean, the goal is not to completely eliminate risk, but to manage it. And I think it will start with awareness amongst coaches, teachers, parents, and players, and recognizing the symptoms early, having sideline testing. There are even a couple of cell phone apps recently which use eye tracking technology that can, with 100% certainty, apparently, according to the vendors, pick up concussion, and strict adherence to the return to play guidelines, adequate technique, tackling technique teaching, and there are other couple of new developments. There are a couple of devices that the players can wear in their mouth guard or in their headgear, which detects the impact and the acceleration, which can warn the staff that the patient has suffered a high impact. There's even talk of symptom tracking, where they can do active tracking of the electrical activity. But that is probably in the future. And then, of course, there are a couple of new imaging techniques that we could use to sort of better determine the damage, but again, mostly in the research phase. So I would say, awareness and prevention is the best.
Okay.
Certainly.
Dr. Viljoen, let me thank you for your time. He's the director of SCP Radiology. It's 11:30. Here are your headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, city power technicians accompanied by police are cutting off illegal electricity connections in Alexandra Township, north of Johannesburg. Veteran South African actor Don Mlangeni Nawa has died. His family confirmed his death in a statement. Nawa was best known for his iconic role as Zeb Matabane on the SABC3 soapie Isidingo and as Lakasha on the classic SABC1 sitcom Scootie's Nice. We'll have details in our later bulletin. And lobby group AfriForum has written to the National Prosecuting Authority to request it to privately prosecute Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane and ANC NEC member Babalo Madikizela. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Dango, for the love of the game and Mzansi for sure. Soccer Zone has relocated to a new slot, 9 p.m. live every Monday on SABC 1. Mzansi Africa.
Fascinating goals.
The unbelievable saves.
From Africa Borwa to the entire African continent to the Bundesliga and the Premier League.
High-level reviews of crucial match scenarios by the legendary Mr. Rev.
Top-class analysis, latest news about the beautiful game.
And Momish of the Week.
SABC Sport Football Weekend ends on Mondays at 9 p.m. on Soccer Zone.
Live on SABC 1. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
It's the catch of the season as our 3 madcap fishing fanatics are back, embarking on even a more exciting adventures across the globe. Get ready for bigger fish, bigger laughs, and more extreme destinations in a series packed with adrenaline-fueled fishing antics and plenty of friendly rivalry. Fishing Impossible Season 2, Fridays at 10 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
Well, it's time for our G20 series with Lerato Tsebe. This is, of course, when we take a look at the G20 and some of the events that are unfolding around it. Lerato, good morning.
To the listeners.
You, of course, have the not so easy job of keeping up with all of the G20 happenings. There was a meeting in Kinshasa on Monday in the DRC, and this is where African trade ministers had met. What was the purpose of that meeting? What were they hoping to achieve?
Well, Cathy, it was the 16th meeting of the AFCFTA Council of Ministers in Kinshasa. It actually officially opened on Tuesday morning. One of the big things that have been under discussion is the responsiveness, obviously, for African countries to respond to the tariffs that have been imposed by the Trump administration. Now, I think last week, if I recall, or if memory serves me correctly, rather, we did discuss this issue about mobilizing the AFCFTA, and it looks as though our ministers have indeed heard us and heard me for that call. The president of the DRC, President Tshisekedi, held the meeting, and he says that he's calling for African leaders to pool resources and try to coordinate efforts to be able to really mobilize more trade and create a common market for goods and services, and to facilitate the free movement of people and capital throughout the continent in order for them to realize its full potential. Now, at the meeting was not just all the 54 ministers of trade throughout the continent, but obviously the head of the AFCFTA, Mr. Wamkele Mnene, who was indeed at that meeting too. The Minister of External Trade for the DRC, Mr. Julian Paluku, is now emphasizing that the DRC needs to itself integrate further into African markets. And what he was actually proposing is that the DRC should be a headquarters of some sort for the AFCFTA for facilitating trade between Central and Southern Africa, which makes quite a lot of sense, in my opinion, as well, by virtue of the fact that there's so much vast natural resources in the DRC. Obviously, management is a different question involved there, but he's saying that it should help to allure more investors from across the globe into investing in African trade.
Of course, while the crux, or at least part of the meeting, was to try and see how to respond to the announcements around tariffs coming out of the U.S. The U.S. president has also then announced this week that he will not be catching a plane to OR Tambo or Waterkloof or wherever it is that he would have likely landed.
Indeed, Cathy, but I think this is really unsurprising. I don't think that anybody was really expecting anything other than him denouncing the G20, and obviously due to the administration's sentiments towards South Africa and the country's land policies. However, our DG, as I had said, I think about 2 weeks ago, Dr. Zaindangoy Durko did have a very fruitful meeting as Troika member of the G20. Again, the Troika countries are Brazil, who's the former host of the G20, South Africa being the current, and the United States, whom potentially could host the next G20 meeting. Dr. Zangor had intimated that the meeting went quite well and that there was fruitful discussions between all three countries. So it is nearly the end of April, but we'll see if potentially there will be a change of heart on behalf of the Trump administration attending the G20.
There is, of course, a level of skepticism, and I would say rightfully so, about what it is that the G20 can achieve without America at the table.
Well, I think everybody's trying to discuss that, and it seems as though there's sort of a global responsiveness of keep calm and carry on, is what I'm seeing transpire here. Obviously, you've got the bigger issue, which is the trade dispute and the tariffs imposition between the United States and China. But it seems as though, Cathy, people are really, or countries and governments are really recalibrating efforts and really trying to widen their own bilateral and multilateral trade agreements, political agreements, defense agreements, vertically and horizontally across the globe to try and pursue new opportunities. I think this has also been a very big learning moment as well about people exercising a degree of political and economic autonomy, and also trying to get more serious about integrating Global South into positions of power within various multilateral institutions.
There's still, of course, all of these different working groups that continue to do the work behind the scenes in the run-up to that summit later on in the year. This week, which are the working groups that have met?
This week we've had two big ones. I'll talk about the one that's just finished, which was the high-level ministerial meeting on Monday in Johannesburg for health. We had Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi and the Director General of the Africa CDC, Center for Disease Control, Dr. Jean Kaseya, all present discussing issues in relation to health, and specifically, Cathy, what was a very important theme throughout this meeting was the issue of pharmaceuticals and vaccine manufacturing in Africa. Dr. Jean Kaseya came out quite loudly slamming South Africa for importing vaccines during COVID and for not manufacturing local ones, which was quite interesting. I thought it wasn't a stinging rebuke, but it was, again, the issue of trying to enhance our ability to produce, and more so to be able to sort of safeguard and enhance local supply chains that can come from South Africa and feed into the remainder of the continent. Dr. Motsoaledi was there as well, and he's calling for essentially for African heads of state to take public health institutions seriously. In summation, he did sort of rebuke African heads of state who go and seek medical care overseas and, are not able to do so locally, sort of intimating that it's a rebuke of your own inability to invest in your own health systems. Deputy Minister of Public Service and Administration, Ms. Binkike Gana, was there as well, And she was also lamenting on the fact that COVID really laid bare the fragility, of global supply chains and the over-independence of external suppliers for medications and vaccines in Africa. So we have a very consistent theme here about enhancing supply chains, about facilitating trade. So very much in line with what's going on broadly internationally currently in relation to trade, but also very much pointing the finger at enhancing the AFCFTA. So that's what happened at that meeting.
Of course, part of the challenge historically has been around, when it comes to what is happening on the continent and perhaps in other parts of the world, in particular Europe and the rest of the West, that when it came down to the wire, there really was no will to come on board and support Africa, whether it was with manufacturing, whether it was with sharing patents, whether it was with financing. And I wonder if a working group like this and meetings such as this actually get to the heart of the issues. Because, of course, in the room would also be representatives of countries that were behind that.
Absolutely, Cathy. It was really interesting. We did have a number of European ambassadors in the room on that day. And I believe there was another lady, I'm not sure if she was an American or not, but it also obviously was a bit of a, I wouldn't say tense per se, but sort of a reminder that many countries in the global south, Africa more particularly, didn't forget about what happened and our ill treatment and sort of the imposition of incongruencies that continue to prevail and exist at the World Trade Organization. You must remember those really onerous agreements that African governments had to sign during COVID, in some cases having to attach state assets. And also being, shrouded in this cloud of secrecy about what we could and could not say as to how much we were buying each drug for, each vaccine for per vial, and how there was this massive discrepancy between the pricing in Africa and pricing in the remainder of the world. But I think, again, it was a big learning moment, and it did feel as though there was really a sense of forced, how can I say, a catalyst to move and to not just have these meetings, but to really start, the engines running to do something about it. And for the DG of the Africa CDC to really just come out and, say something like that, I think that it's quite a positive thing. And it's that it's being taken seriously and that Africa is now essentially trying to prepare for the next pandemic, should there be one.
All right. On the agenda for the coming week?
On the agenda for the coming week, Cathy, we've got a big meeting. We've got the second Finance and Central Bank Ministers meeting in Washington, D.C. This is going to be happening in conjunction to the spring meeting for the World Bank, which starts on the 21st of April to the 26th of April. All African Finance and Central Bank ministers will be there, and globally as well. This should be quite interesting as, again, given what's going on globally with the tensions that are coming out of Washington and sort of imposing and vacillating onto all other capitals. So I'm intrigued to see what's the discussion going to be, what is the mood going to be, and if some central bank governors and finance ministers are going to choose to object politically or quietly by just not being in attendance. So we will wait to see.
Well, I don't know if this will necessarily be out of protest or not, but surely our own finance minister should not be globetrotting right now. He should leave Washington alone and sort out whether or not we're going to have a VAT increase come the end of the month.
Cathy, I think when you are the Minister of Finance and you are tasked with the huge responsibility of being in charge of the country's finances, you should be able to manage more than one crisis at once. So here's hoping that the minister will leave a plan and or his team will be able to formulate one, and he'll be able to have his hands in two places at once, resolving a very serious crisis at home and a bigger one globally.
Lerato, are you advocating for an announcement at the 11th hour? Are you saying that the minister must go and sort out other issues while you and I are effectively then going to be waiting literally until the week of the 20-something, if not on exactly the 30th, before we know what the way forward is.
Not at all, Cathy. I'm not advocating for tardiness. I mean, I think the country is on tenterhooks right now. Everybody wants to know if they're going to be 0.5 that increase. I think I am advocating for him to show face on an international stage, especially as the Minister of Finance, especially as the current host for the G20, especially as Africa's, second largest economy. I think that the team Treasury is very well skilled and very well equipped. I think that Parliament has done an excellent job on really honing in on their role in formulating the budget and the discussions and deliberations that should have gone into place prior to this rather embarrassing crisis. So I'm seeing a greater deal of responsibility being assumed by various role players and various stakeholders whom are tasked legally with this responsibility. So really, we will see what's going to happen. But I am hoping for the best.
Let's hope he has a press briefing before he climbs that plane to Washington. Thanks, Lerato. Lerato Tsebe, as always, bringing you a wrap of the G20 series. Isn't she just amazing? Really great to have her on the series. All right, that's where we wrap it up on the talking point for today. Show back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Up next is the book reading.
Have you recently migrated to the new TV licenses payment website? Make sure your account stays active by registering again or resetting your password. Don't miss out on all the fantastic new features our brand new website offers. Get registered today and stay connected with us. With the new website, get your payments done quickly and hassle-free with a wide range of services. So make sure you register to take advantage of all the great client features. Visit www.tvlic.co.za today. TV licenses. Do it for the things that matter.
Pressure keeps mounting and the thirst for maximum points has drastically increased. FC Union Berlin and VfB Stuttgart are in a tense battle for victory. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Do not miss out on FC Union Berlin versus VfB Stuttgart on Saturday, 19 April at 6:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book The Thing with Zola by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase.
Zola looked over the pile. There were some lovely things, but she didn't feel comfortable taking anything apart from the watch. She strapped it on her wrist. It did seem to suit her, and sat down at her desk ready to work. She read through her emails and tried to keep herself from looking over at Oguhle, who seemed preoccupied with throwing things out. I think the carpet needs to go too, Oguhle announced to the working men. Yes, take the carpet, please. Zola watched as more of the staff were invited into Oguhle's office to browse through her growing pile of cast-offs. What's up with your boss? Kanyisa asked, settling in. I thought she'd be all about the expo this week, but I've just got this awesome vase and an unopened box of Belgian chocolates. The admin girls are all fighting over some of Oguhle's earrings. Zola raised her shoulders in a shrug. Apparently she's starting over. Zola wasn't sure what it was about, but she was certain she didn't want to know any more than she had to. Kanyisa laughed. I always knew she'd lose it. Hey, don't say that. Zola leaped to Oguhle's defense. She's obviously just going through something. Kanyisa rolled her eyes and started up her laptop, while Zola watched Oguhle carry more ornaments out of the bathroom with her one functional arm, struggling through obvious pain. Zola knew it wasn't her place to help, but she really wanted to. She hated to see Oguhle like this. It only made her guilt heavier to bear. You know, maybe we should move to a new office space altogether, Oguhle said loudly from the passage. The cleaning spree went on the whole day. She didn't answer emails or her phone. With the expo just 3 days away, Zola was worried. Oguhle? Zola said, coming into the messy office towards the end of a less than productive afternoon. I've sent you an email with things you need to approve. It's kind of urgent. Oguhle turned and glared at Zola. Oh, so now you're the boss now, You're going to tell me what to do. She raised her voice. I'll respond to your emails when I damn well feel like it. The office fell silent, and Zola stood stunned. Then Oguhle turned and walked away like nothing had happened. Zola felt a lump in her throat and blinked away the tears. She walked sheepishly back to her desk and sat down. Sorry, Kanyisa whispered. I did warn you, though. Oguhle is totally nuts. For the next hour, Zola kept her head down and tried to pick up Oguhle's slack until it was time to go. When Kanyisa got up to leave at exactly 5 o'clock, Zola did the same. Zola got home feeling drained. She didn't want to eat, and she hardly said a word to her mother or her sister. She just wanted to take a bath and go to bed. She called Mbali to say goodnight, and he knew from her voice that something was wrong. She did what? He asked angrily after Zola had recounted the story of her day. I'm not telling you this so you can do something about it, Zola said. I'm just telling you what happened. But she can't treat you that way, Mbali argued, clearly livid. You were just doing your job, and she needed to do hers. From the thudding sound coming through the phone, Zola could tell he was pacing. She'll get over it. Zola suddenly became the comforter, even though she had called to be comforted. I guess we just have to give her time. Mbali stopped pacing. I guess so. He agreed. But if she ever does anything like that again, I'm going to have to do something about it. Zola giggled. I like how protective you are. I thought you were upset. I was until I spoke to you. I'm glad I could cheer you up. Listen, my dad's back from Tokyo, and I'm seeing him on Thursday, so I might need some cheering up myself afterwards. Meet me for dinner? I've got the expo the next day, but I suppose everyone has to eat. Pick me up after work? Right at the gate. Zola fell asleep feeling a lot better. Except for Oguhle. The office was empty as usual when Zola arrived on Thursday morning. Wednesday had passed in a blur of activity. She'd had to pick up a lot of Oguhle's slack, but everything was now sorted, and Zola was feeling good about the expo. She could afford to take a little breather tonight, and she was looking forward to seeing Mbali for dinner. Although she hadn't mentioned her date to Nomsebenzi, Zola had come in dressed for her date with Mbali, a tight black dress, nothing too fancy, but with her new watch strapped to her wrist and a set of matching bangles. When she saw Zola arrive, Oguhle sheepishly walked out of her office and set a beautifully wrapped box of chocolates on Zola's desk. I'm sorry, she said. Zola looked up at her and nodded. I saw the emails you've been sending, and I've realized I've dropped the ball. Oguhle paused to choose her next words. Anyway, thank you for holding the fort. It's okay, Zola said shortly to avoid a full-blown conversation with Oguhle. She had just wanted a normal work life, but it was becoming obvious that it was impossible with a boss like Oguhle. I broke my promise. I let things that have nothing to do with work affect our working relationship. I'll do better from here on. Oguhle left the chocolates on Zola's desk and went back to her own. Zola moved the box aside and started her day. She went through her emails, realizing she would still have to sit down with Oguhle to brief her on some last details. On the other side of the glass, in her now bare office, Oguhle sat feeling sorry for herself. Changing the decor had been quite a rush. But now she was faced with that awkward feeling of emptiness where the old vision had been removed, but her new vision had not yet taken shape. She'd wanted to purge herself of everything that reminded her of Mbali and the life she thought they'd have. But even in this empty office, she hadn't been able to rid herself of him. Eventually, she picked up the phone and called her mother. Hle, darling, how's the expo coming? I'm so excited to see what you've done. Yeah, everything is great, Oguhle replied, her tone dull. Baby, what's wrong? Priscilla sighed. Please don't tell me this is about Mbali. I'm so tired of hearing about that boy. Oguhle got up to close the door to her office. The empty walls and floors now irritated her more than the office she had decorated with Mbali. It was yet another reminder that their happy times were over. You're obsessed with that boy, Oguhle, and it's not healthy. I'm going to be straight with you, baby, because I'm your mother and I care about you. You need to stop this now. Priscilla lectured. Oguhle groaned into the phone. You don't understand, Mama. It's harder than you think. But Priscilla was not having it. She was tired of Oguhle's constant complaining and scheming, and she was becoming seriously worried about her daughter. You are not the first woman to have her heart broken, Oguhle, and like everyone else, you'll get over it. Oguhle tried to protest, but her mother cut her off. No, baby. People get over the end of marriages that have lasted their entire adult lives, and you want to fall apart over your high school boyfriend. There's nothing you can do to make him marry you, Priscilla said firmly. And there's nothing I can do either. Jeez, Mom, I'm not asking you to. Hearing what her mother thought of the situation really did make her sound crazy, and sitting in the stripped-down office only drove that message home. If I knew how to just get over him, I would, Oguhle said in a heartbeat. She looked through her glass wall at Zola, who was sitting at her desk as calm as a cucumber. Let's not forget, Oguhle thought to herself, that Zola had also just gotten out of a long-term relationship.
That was another episode of the book The Thing with Zola, written by Zibu Sithole, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online at www.penmacmillan.co.za and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase. Technical production, Wiseman Manmele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
It's 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th of April, 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
There is significant infrastructure backlog here in the Eastern Cape, which affects the provision of water, particularly, and electricity.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says that there is significant infrastructure backlog in the Eastern Cape.
When coming back from the KGB residence singing, he decided to come out with the gun, and then he started shooting students. So we've got a lot of witnesses. So I don't even want to use allegedly.
And the Walter Sisulu University Student Representative Council is calling for the residence manager that allegedly fatally shot one person to be suspended. Coming up in sport,
Stellenbosch have a personnel issue. They've got a couple of injuries as they go into Africa, and the supercomputer's been working on Arsenal's match tonight in the Champions League.
Oh, that useless supercomputer. Anyway, I can't wait to hear what it says. John Gericke with those details in the second half of the show. But for now, please share your views with us. 41391 is the SMS line number. You'll be charged R1.50 per SMS. You can also write to us via X at SABC News_radio or send us a WhatsApp voice note on 082-692-3909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Wednesday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, here's the latest news from Ondelambana.
Thank you, Sakina. Top stories of this hour. A court blow for MK Party and John Hlophe, and legendary actor Don Mlangeni passes away. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good day. The Constitutional Court has dismissed with costs the Umkhonto weSizwe political party and Dr. John Hlophe's bid to appeal in the interim interdict that bars him from serving on the Judicial Service Commission. The court, in an order dated 15 April, refused the application for leave to appeal as no case has been made out for a direct appeal. Kenny Mapanga reports.
The Western Cape High Court barred Hlophe from sitting in the JSC in September last year, pending the main bid to challenge his suitability to serve on the body which appoints and disciplines judicial officers. The court has since heard main arguments on the suitability of Hlophe, who has been removed from judicial office, to sit on this body, and judgment remains reserved. Meanwhile, Hlophe is the current leader of the official opposition, the MK Party, in the National Assembly. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
City power technicians accompanied by police are cutting off illegal electricity connections in Alexandra Township, north of Johannesburg. The Johannesburg power entity says today's operation is part of ongoing efforts to curb electricity theft and improve the safety of communities. City Power says it loses millions in revenue due to illegal electricity connections. Oliswa Makiki reports.
City Power technicians are currently cutting and removing illegal electricity cables here at Greenville and are dominated by shacks. Residents of this area continue to watch in disbelief, and many are disappointed. Police have been deployed here and are monitoring the operation. City Power says its internal investigation has revealed that some of the illegal connections are done by its employees and contractors, and has since dismissed more than 40 of them. For SABC News, I'm Kodisa Makiki in Alexandra.
Veteran South African actor Don Mlangeni Nawa has died. His family confirmed his death in a statement. Nawa was best known for his iconic role as Zeb Matabane on SABC3 soapy Isidingo and as Lakasha on the classic SABC1 sitcom Scootie's Nice. We'll have details in our later bulletin. Lobby group AfriForum has written to the National Prosecuting Authority to request it to privately prosecute Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane and ANC NEC member Babalo Madikizela. The matter relates to the alleged misappropriation of funds used to transport mourners to the funeral of struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela, who died in April 2018. It is alleged that Mabuyane received 450,000 rand that he used to pay for renovations to his private house. Madikizela was allegedly paid 350,000 rand through his wife's company, and 280,000 rand was paid into the ANC's fundraising account. The funds were allegedly siphoned from Mbizana local municipality. The High Court in Bisho had set aside the matter, and later the NPA declined to prosecute. AfriForum's Barry Bateman.
AfriForum's private prosecution unit believes there is overwhelming evidence and a compelling case for prosecution. We do not share the prosecutor's view that the evidence does not justify any criminal prosecution. We cannot avoid concluding that the NPA's failure to make a decision is based more on the political implications and consequences of such a decision than a duty to prosecute without fear, favour or prejudice.
Recapping the top story, the Constitutional Court has dismissed with costs the Umkhonto weSizwe political party and Dr. John Hlophe's bid to appeal the interim interdict that bars him from serving on the Judicial Service Commission. I am Ondelambara for SFM News headlines at 12:30.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. with Sakina Kamwendo.
Well, very good afternoon, everybody. It is 6 minutes after 12, and thanks so much for being with us here on Update at Noon. Lambana will update us on the latest news at the bottom of the hour. Now, City Power will embark on cut-off operations targeted at illegal electricity connections in Alexandra, north of Joburg. And as you heard there, the update from Ondela already, they are there, but we'll find out from our reporter who's on that story what the latest is. Not the first time. It would be interesting to know whether the businesses and premises that were cut off the last time, whether they were reconnected, and if so, whether that was done legally. The other question is, are the officials who go out there looking out for such? So we'll check in with our reporter to find out what's happening. And then some of the other stories that we are taking a look at. Technical school in Carltonville, west of Johannesburg in Gauteng. The only one for the whole region is literally under attack from thugs. Now, as we understand, water and electricity cables have been vandalized, and it's impacting on learning and teaching, as you would imagine, and learner and staff morale very low at that institution. Neria Sakota has gone out there to see what the situation is. And then we will follow up on the briefing by the Film and Publication Board on harmful content brought by social media and other online platforms, and also measures to counter these. Zaleen Merrington is watching that for us in Parliament. And following up on a story, so it's an interesting one, but I think I'm going to park it for now, simply because our reporter has indicated that they've been unable to actually get in which court this particular matter is sitting, and also where the suspects are being held, allegedly. And it's a story about 2 doctors and 6 nurses in Gqeberha who were allegedly going to appear in the High Court on charges of attempted murder, fraud, and the selling of human parts. So our reporter is still trying to track down what's happening there. And then of the 18 accused in the asbestos roof removal trial, they are back in court today. And also the Jocelyn Smith case, as well as the trial of a former police informer of the security branch, that cost us 4 case also underway. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, day 2 of that oversight visit in the Eastern Cape. So those are the stories that we'll be bringing you updates on.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says there is a significant infrastructure backlog in the Eastern Cape, which affects the provision of water and electricity, healthcare, education, and transport. Now, he says this is exacerbated by the growing impact of climate change. President Ramaphosa and his cabinet met with the Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane and his Executive Council to discuss conditions and opportunities in the province. He says that despite progress in many areas, the province's growth and development is also significantly hampered by poor governance, mismanagement of public resources, and corruption, particularly at municipal level.
Inequality and unemployment remain extremely high here in the Eastern Cape. As Minister Thabisa, in opening this meeting, correctly pointed out, the Eastern Cape is the poorest of all our 9 provinces. And we do count 4 provinces as being so badly affected by the legacy of the past and also suffering from the plight of poverty. There is significant infrastructure backlog here in the Eastern Cape, which affects the provision of water, particularly, and electricity, but it also impacts on other social areas of our people's lives, healthcare, education, as well as transport. This is exacerbated by the growing impact also of climate change, which we also need to talk about. The effects of climate change are felt on a widespread basis in our country, but especially in KZN, the Eastern Cape, and Gauteng also, and Northwest continue to suffer that, as does the Western Cape as well on the more eastern side. Now, as a consequence of these challenges, the province's natural and other endowments are not supporting inclusive growth in an equitable manner, despite the progress that we have made, and we have made progress, and the Premier correctly talks about some of the developments, and where we visited yesterday the port of Mocha. It is a product of what has happened post-apartheid or during the period of freedom in our country, that we have been able to develop such a significant port, which, as you correctly say, was opposed by a number of other non-governmental organizations, and they were obviously focusing on the environmental degradation, which they feared would ensue, but which has not, but which has also led to a great deal of progress and job creation as well. So we have made progress, but despite the progress that we have made in a number of areas, the province's growth and development is also significantly hampered in a number of ways, some of which have to do with poor governance, mismanagement of public resources, corruption, and this particularly happening at municipal level.
And that was President Cyril Ramaphosa on his 2-day oversight visit to the Eastern Cape.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m.
13 minutes after 12. Now, the Constitutional Court has dismissed with cost the Umkhonto weSizwe political party and Dr. John Hlophe's bid to appeal the interim interdict that bars him from serving on the Judicial Service Commission. Now, the court, in an order dated 15 April, refused the application for leave to appeal as no case has been made out for a direct appeal. Now, joining us in studio to tell us more about the implications of this is Cathy Mohlahlana. Cathy, good afternoon. So, interesting outcome here, I mean, for the MK, and of course also just more broadly speaking, given the issues that were raised. But what are the immediate implications of this particular outcome?
Well, good afternoon to you, Sakina, and to the listeners. Well, to be quite frank, there isn't much of an implication because we know the main application has been heard and we are awaiting the outcome from the Western Cape High Court on that. What they tried to do with this particular bid was to appeal the interim order. That was the one that barred him in the interim from participating in the JSC pending the finalization of Part B, which is the main application that we have seen. So once you get an outcome from Part B, which is probably the route that should have been taken, that you wait for the matter to be heard in full and decided on the merits in full before you ever think about an appeal or anything of that nature. Now they can wait for the outcome and see how they handle it going forward. But I don't think there was any benefit in trying to appeal an interim order that is granted pending the finalization of answering this question of whether Dr. John Hlophe, an individual who has been removed from judicial office, is suitable or not to serve on the JSC, which is a body that appoints and disciplines judicial office, amongst other things.
So Part A, of course, that's where it gets really interesting now, because you have the separation of powers, you've got the legislative arm, and then you've got the judiciary. And now, because I think part of the arguments that were forwarded